the leaders will focus on our support to Ukraine. Allies have provided support to Ukraine for several years, and we have stepped up with more military support, financial support, humanitarian support to help Ukraine uphold its fundamental right for self-defense. NATO's core task is to protect and defend all allies. We have increased our military presence in the eastern part of the alliance. The NATO leaders will today address the need for a reset of our deterrence and defense in the longer term. And the first step is the establishment of 4 new battle groups in the eastern part of the alliance in Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary and Slovakia. We need to do more, and therefore we need to invest more, and there is a new sense of urgency, and I expect that the leaders will agree to accelerate the investments in defense to meet the pledge we have made to invest more in defense. And I welcome that several allies have already made announcements on investing more in defense. The meeting today will demonstrate the importance of North America and Europe standing together, facing this crisis. And we are the strongest alliance in the world, and as long as we stand together, we are also safe. Thank you.
Good morning, Secretary General. Hadley Gamble with CNBC. I want to get a sense from you of NATO's understanding of President Putin's actual mental state at this point, because what we understand, of course, is that even his central bank governor is trying to leave her post, and he's seeing some defection, if you will, from his inner circle. What's your sense of his mental state at this point?
President Putin has made a big mistake, and that is to launch a war, to wage war against an independent sovereign nation. He has underestimated the strength of the Ukrainian people, the bravery of the Ukrainian people and the armed forces, and therefore they are also meeting much more resistance than they expected. We need, in a way, to address the actions that we see Russia is doing in Ukraine, and that's also the reason why we have significantly stepped up the support to Ukraine and why we have increased the presence of NATO troops in the eastern part of the alliance and increased the readiness of our troops. We do so to be able to respond and address any threat, any challenge to our security, and what kind of decisions and what kind of decisions they may make in Moscow. I will not speculate further about that.
But are you worried about a nuclear threat?
From Ukrainian media, it's been talked about. Can you explain, if not, why not, or yes, what positions?
NATO allies provide significant military support to Ukraine. NATO allies have trained tens of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers who are now on the front line fighting against the invading Russian forces. The Ukrainian army is much better equipped, much better trained, much better commanded now than in 2014. And the combination of training and support from NATO allied countries with the bravery and the courage of the Ukrainian armed forces is enabling the Ukrainians to really resist and actually fight back the invading Russian army. We provide Ukraine also with advanced air defense systems, with anti-tank weapons, with ammunition and fuel. So allies are providing many different types of support. But we have also made it clear that we will not send in NATO troops on the ground or NATO planes in the air. We do that because we have a responsibility to ensure that this conflict do not escalate beyond Ukraine. That will cause even more suffering, even more death, even more destruction. And to declare a no-fly zone over Ukraine means that we need to impose it. And to impose a no-fly zone means that we need to massively attack Russian air defense systems in Russia, in Belarus and in Ukraine, and also be ready to shoot down Russian planes. And then the risk for a full-fledged war between NATO and Russia will be very high, and that will cause more death and more destruction.
You mentioned yesterday that if chemical weapons are used in Ukraine, it could have a direct impact in NATO countries. Could this be considered an attack on a NATO ally?
I will not speculate beyond saying the following, that any use of chemical weapons would fundamentally change the nature of the conflict. It will be a blatant violation of international law, and it will have widespread and severe consequences. The seriousness of using chemical weapons, of course, becomes even more obvious, knowing that there is a risk always for contamination, that chemical agents are spread over bigger areas. So this will be a catastrophe for the people of Ukraine, but of course there is also a risk that we can see the spread of chemical agents also into NATO territory. I will not speculate beyond the fact that NATO is always ready to defend, to protect and to react to any type of attack on a NATO allied country.
How concerned are you about China's role in this? And the second question, what does the new military posture of NATO mean in terms of national defense spending?
On national defense spending, I see a new sense of urgency among allies, that they all understand that since we now need to do more, we face the most serious security crisis in a generation, so therefore we need to invest more in our security. And the allies understand that the only way to do that is also to allocate more money for national defense budgets. And I expect allies to agree to accelerate the implementation of the commitments we have made to invest more in defense. And I welcome the decision, for instance, by Germany to spend 2% of GDP on defense. This will really make a difference because Germany has such a big economy. So the increased investments by Germany makes a difference for the whole alliance. Yeah. Well, what we call on China to join the rest of the world in clearly condemning the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and not provide political support, and of course neither provide any kind of material support to the Russian invasion of Ukraine.